small towns and snow is better than skyscrapers and stock markets and stuff like that. And they wrap that up with about 12 minutes, which conveniently is enough time to wrap up any side storylines with the side characters, and of course end with True Love's Kiss. Okay, so I love traditions, I love memories, I love flannel pajamas, even in Southeast Texas. I love extra charity. I love things like the Angel Tree Project and things like that happen at Christmas time. I love my mom's Chex Mix. She makes Chex Mix, especially for me. It just has the three kinds. Look, I'm gonna tear up talking about the Chex Mix. It has just the Chex Mix and nothing else. No pretzels, no peanuts, just Chex Mix, all baked up in sauce.
Oh yeah.
I love my mom's Chex Mix. And I love John Denver and the Muppets. Can I get an amen? I love Christmas time. Love it. But there is another reason that I love Christmas time. I love the celebration of Christmas because I am a type A people-pleasing planner. I love knowing what I'm supposed to do, what the expectation is. And while being a type A people-pleasing planner has its flaws and it has its drawbacks, to be sure, there is something in my personality type that really responds to something specific that happened at Christmas time. Christmas, the birth of Jesus, set into motion a real gift to type A people-pleasing planners like myself. Of course, it also set into motion the great gift of saving grace for all of us. But there's something else that begins with the birth of Jesus. It's the gift of example. Over the next several weeks leading up to Christmas, here at Christ Covenant, we're going to be taking a look at the first few steps, the baby steps of Jesus, that give us a blueprint of how to live as workers in his kingdom. And I get to share the first step with you today. The first thing Jesus did in his effort to give his followers a blueprint for discipleship was the canceling of heaven's comforts. The canceling of heaven's comforts. The voluntary setting aside of one thing to take on the opposite. How many of you guys have a chair like this at home? No one? Shocking. This is kind of a special chair. It's pretty unique, maybe even one of a kind, I don't know. This chair actually lives at the Beard's house. We always like to joke that Jocelyn has the best timeout chair in the world. But it lives at the Beard house, and the thing about this chair is it's prime real estate. Everybody wants to sit in it. It sits close to the fireplace, so it's comfy and warm. It's a really soft seat. Adam, come verify that for me. Have a seat. Pretty cushy, right? Did you see what he did? Both arms on the arms. He's ready to move. So there you are. So it sits close to the fireplace. The seat's really soft. It's nice and wide for people like Adam, you know, people like me. It's nice and wide, so you can even kind of curl up in it if you want to. It's comfortable. But what I love about sitting in this chair, when I am the one sitting in this chair, is that I am the one sitting in this chair. I don't know if that made sense to you, but Adam, you feel a sense of strength when you're sitting in the chair, right? It has lions on it. Yeah, it has lions on it, man. Yeah, there's a sense of authority. When you're sitting in the chair, for that moment at least, there is a sense of authority, control. I'm in charge. I am something real special. And Adam is something real special, but you're done sitting in the chair now. Okay, thank you, Adam. Okay, so let's talk about thrones for just a moment. The throne, of course, is historically associated with monarchies, right? That this is a symbol of rule, and the more intricate or great in size the throne is, the more that speaks to the authority of the royal sitting in it. So this morning, let me tell you a story about two thrones. And since it's a story and it's about thrones, we're going to call it A Tale of Two Thrones. All right, so we meet our first king, and we see his throne in the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. I'll give you a moment to turn there if you'd like. It'll be here on the screen as well. Second chapter of Matthew, we'll begin in verse 1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. That has that ring of, if Mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. I think that's how it was for Herod in Jerusalem. If Herod isn't happy, nobody's happy. So Herod was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all of the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people's Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for this child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I, too, can worship him." Now, of course, we know that Herod had no intention of worshiping this prophesied Messiah. What we see here is step one of an incredibly quick escalation for the king. Herod is anxiety-ridden by discomfort, that inkling of a feeling that something's not quite right, or that something might not be right in the future. Herod is seated here on his super cushy throne with his result. And all of a sudden, that seat doesn't feel as comfy and cozy. Because what if? What if all the things that I enjoy right now don't stay? What if this is the one who will remove me from my throne? And so Herod slams down his right hand and he grips that throne for all it is worth. He is going to hang on to his comfort. He is going to track that baby down, and he is going to kill that one baby. We, of course, see in the following verses that God the Father intervenes, right? He speaks to the Magi, and he speaks to Joseph in a dream, and he thwarts this plan of King Herod. So we pick up with our king again in verse 16. It says, "When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious." Some translations call it undone. He was undone, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time that he had learned from Moses. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." Merry Christmas, everyone. Is that not just the happiest piece of the Christmas story? Herod is at this point ruled by desperation when he realizes he's no longer in control. He slams down his arm and he grips on for comfort. He slams down his other arm and he is white-knuckling the control of this throne while he murders all the babies in Bethlehem and surrounding areas. Ironically, further proving that Jesus is in fact the Messiah. Herod is a genuinely sad story, isn't he? If you look at what the Bible and historians tell us about this man, it's heartbreaking. You can see somebody who searched his whole life for contentment. He was married 10 times. He had a lifetime of decisions that were based solely on fear. He executed his favorite wife for suspicion of an affair. He executed his brother-in-law, his mother-in-law, and 3 of his 14 children for suspicion of overthrow plots. And perhaps one of the saddest grasps for honor that I've ever heard of was toward the end of his life. When he realized that he was very self-aware, he realized no one was going to be sad when he died. And so this is what he did. He captured the principal heads of every family in Judaism and brought them to imprison them in Jerusalem in order that they be put to death on whatever day it was that he died, so that there would in fact be mourning for his death. It's tragic, isn't it? Now, luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and upon Herod's death, they released those prisoners. But is there any piece of this story and this man's throne that doesn't just reek with the desperation for comfort and control. He had a throne, and he spent every second, every moment of his life in complete misery trying to keep that throne. Let's take a look at a different throne and a different king. Philippians chapter 2, 6 through 8. It describes Jesus. This is Philippians chapter 2, verses 6, 7, and 8. Describing Jesus, it says, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Where we have this picture of Herod clinging to the arms of his throne, clinging to the most false versions of comfort and control and power and authority, everything a throne represents, we have this contrasting picture of Jesus, who is experiencing true joy and true peace, and who is the actual authority. But instead of curling his fingers around the arms of that throne, he gets up and walks away. Instead of rightfully leaving us in the mess we had made for ourselves. John 1:14 says, the Word, Jesus, became flesh and blood and made his dwelling among us. And because of that, we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The contrast is so great. You have Herod clinging to kingship by force, and you have Jesus assuming kingship by sacrifice. You have Herod lunging for honor with possessions and accomplishments. And you have Jesus assuming honor by obedience and humility. We talk about polar opposites, right? Jesus even points it out, this contrast, in the book of Mark, chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. I read this little scene that's later in Jesus' life when he's traveling with his disciples. I read this little scene, and it makes me think of when we'll watch like America's Got Talent or American Idol or whatever with kids, and Lucas's eyes light up when there's like some 7 or 8-year-old belting out, some Whitney Houston song or whatever, and his eyes will light up, and he'll look at me and he'll go, "Mom, did you hear that?" And then I have to kind of break his little heart when I look back at him and go, "Yes, she yells very nicely." And in 10 years, she'll barely be able to talk. But that's kind of what Jesus does here, okay? So in verses 1 and 2, it says, as Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." And then Jesus breaks his little heart a little bit. "Do you see all these great buildings?" Jesus replied, "Not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." And we know that in 70 AD, the Romans did in fact destroy that very temple. Do you know who was credited with having had that temple built? Herod. King Herod, and everything that he accomplished ended in complete and utter ruin. He is a sad story. But the thing to remember about the Bible, the thing I'm always reminding the kids and the teenagers, is that the Bible isn't just a story. It's a great narrative. But Herod was a real man. He's a sad story. But beyond that, he's a sad reality. And I found myself wondering, is he an uncommon reality? I kind of think he's not. Let's ask ourselves some tough questions this morning. How connected are we to comfort? How desperately are we gripping the things that make us feel nice? How connected are we to control? And believe me when I tell you I am talking to myself. How desperately do we hang on to being in charge of the details of our life? are the places that we seek honor. How fruitless are the places that we seek recognition. In this first step of Jesus, we see a pretty clear blueprint of how not to do it, what it looks like, and this is what it looks like. Herod spent a lifetime claiming and reclaiming his throne and was essentially imprisoned by it. But then there's Jesus, this baby in a manger who is soon going to utter the words, "Come, follow me." And in this first example, we get a glimpse of what it means to follow him. Let go of comfort. Hold loosely to security. Leave behind your desire to rule and control. Take up your cross and walk with me. Walk a life with me towards sacrifice and obedience. And by the way, adventures and glory beyond what you could ever imagine. Step away from the throne. Think for a moment about some of the greats of our faith. Abraham, who went where God would show him. Gideon, who took on an army 450 times bigger than him. But don't worry, because he had some flashlights and some kitchen pots. So he was armed with some heavy artillery. David, who stepped in front of a giant with no armor before anyone knew that he would be the great king. Joseph, who had been let down by humans in every possible way and chose to serve those exact humans. Moses, who had to confront his own failures, his own grasping at control and comfort to free the Israelites. Elijah, a hunted man who stood in front of the prophets of Baal and called down fire from heaven. And a young woman in the patriarchal world who said they can think what they're going to think. They can say what they're going to say. But serving God isn't about comfort and control. And I won't be imprisoned by my own throne. That was the call on each of those lives. That is the call on each of ours. Step away from the throne. Quit placing comfort and control at the top of your list because you simply are not the center of the story. That is a fake throne.
Amen.
Matthew 16:24. Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." But here's the thing. We can't follow Jesus when we are clinging to our own throne. John 15:5 says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is he that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." But here's the thing. You can't abide in Jesus if you are abiding in your own throne. We can try Herods of the world. We can build our temples of stuff and accomplishments. And we can try and take out or neutralize the people that threaten us or frighten us. We can try to control every piece of reality that might affect us. But apart from Jesus, none of that's happening. And here's why. 1 Peter 2:21. I'm going to ask you, 1 Peter 2:21, can you pull up that slide, Jojo? Maybe not? Okay, I'll read it. 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 21. "For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his footsteps. For to this you have been called." Let's remember what this is from our Philippians passage. It gives us the description of what it is we have been called to. And here it is, Philippians 2, verses 6 through 8. Let's read this together. "Who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. These, my friends, are the footsteps we're supposed to follow. Footsteps of humility and obedience and sacrifice. Herod's sad life was completely ruled by his continual grip on that throne. And his life ended as tragically as it was lived. But listen to the conclusion of that Philippians passage that describes Jesus' first missionary steps, those steps of humility and obedience and sacrifice. Philippians 2:9-11, just following the passage we just read. It says, therefore, so the therefore refers to the two verses we just read. Therefore, because he stepped away from the comforts of heaven, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Well, that's a better ending, isn't it? So here it is, church. The important question that the last 2,500 words have led to. When you leave this place today, as you determine your spending, as you determine how you use your time, as you determine your treatment of the people around you, as you make decisions regarding your schoolwork, your education, your employment, or simply the things that occupy your thoughts, as you make decisions about what you will base your very identity on, and where you will look for fulfillment and contentment, as you decide the day-by-day, moment-by-moment importance of comfort and control in your life, here's the question. Will you cling to your throne, or will you step away and bow down at his? I'm going to ask you guys to pray with me a little bit differently today. I'm a children's minister, and so the hands-on thing is big with me. So as we pray today, would you begin by just clenching your fists? And I want you to think about the things that make you comfortable, that you may be holding a little too tightly to. And I want you to think about the things you probably don't actually have any control of, but you cling to them in desperation. And as we pray this morning, as a sign of your commitment to let God do his thing, would you just release those hands as we pray? God, thank you so much for this example that you gave us and this cautionary tale that you included in your word. God, as we leave this place today, would you help us to depend on your power to let go of the arms of our own thrones, that we release our desire for comfort, and we would release our desperation to control things, that we would experience the freedom and the joy of trusting you and bowing at your throne. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.